Now we move on to the major temple architectural styles. These temple architecture styles, they were an improvement over the older styles, and the basic idea was of Panchayatan temple style. All these major styles, they developed from Panchayatan style. In north, they became Nagar. In south, they became Dravid. And in peninsular parts, they became the Vesar style. Now, see, this is the Nagar style of temple architecture. This is the Dravid style, and this is the Vesar style. Actually, Vesar style has been said as a combination of both Nagar and Dravid style, and it developed under the Chalukya kings of Karnataka region. You can find that the Shikhar part, the top spire of Vesar style, is more like a pagoda, a Buddhist temple, while the northern part Shikhar is like a mountain, Meru mountain, and the southern part Shikhar is more like a curved structure, more like a toran or a gateway. All the three structures are on raised, elevated platforms. They are exquisite in their carvings, they are superb in their execution, and they are very, very expansive in their strength and expanse. Now, this is a simple slide where through sketches I have tried to show how the carvings of the Shikhar evolved over the periods. You see, this is the first stage of development. This is the second stage, and this is the third stage of development. You can see the use of pillars, the use of beam, then over the beam another set of pillars, then another beam, and then the topmost Kalash-like structure resting over it. With time, decorations have come up. The simple pillars of the first stage have become exquisite carvings, and since the top becomes more heavy, so even the pillars are evolved. The pillars start having supports like this, so that they're able to support the heavy top. Then you see the carvings coming up more and more. The simple Kalash becomes several Kalash, several structures come up here, and lots of bulges come up. Some scholars trace this idea to the stupa style. If you remember the ancient stupa, the modern period stupas, you will find they were like this. Umbrellas were on the top. So they have compared this style with this, that the basic idea was being developed from here. Since it was a closed structure, they didn't use pillars. Once they started making it an open structure, they started using pillars and they supported it with a beam. Same can be said of the Toran style, the gateway styles as well. Now in the third stage, the development becomes more apparent and more developed. See, the Kalash becomes more prominent, and see the decorations. You can find several Kalash coming up together, and even the beams are well decorated or well covered, so you can't easily make out. Now here we can make out the two beams, and here we can partially make out the beams. But in this third stage, we can't make out the beams easily. Actually, several beams are there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 can easily be counted. But see, due to lots of exquisite carving, the beam has been covered and the edges have become more curvy and more decorative. Now, if you see the base, again, the pillars have become more developed. See, more refinement taking place. And with this, you can see over time, developments took place in temple architecture as well. Now, the point which one is trying to make is that art and architecture did not develop simply. The trajectory of growth was very complex growth. You need to keep in mind that what was the geographical requirement of the region? What was the religious requirement of the region? What was the idea of the king who was patronizing these things? How far the laborers and the craftsmen were skilled in executing those ideas? And how did the local population respond to these things? So when you're discussing these art forms, just keep these things in mind so that your answer becomes more and more prominent and clear. For example, first you need to discuss the geographical background of these temples. Second, the raw materials which were being used. Third, the patronizing power, the king. Fourth, the period. Fifth, the way, the purpose, the intention. Sixth, the skill of the craftsman. Seventh, the audience or the viewership. And eighth, that what was the socio-economic implication of these things. Now, by the time of Gupta period, when with the maturity of Gupta period, you will find that art does not remain art for the sake of art. It starts getting associated with several socio-economic developments as well. You will find Indian temples were not only symbols of Indian art and culture, they also became a prominent player in Indian social history as well. Most of the temples, they started acting as bankers, they started lending money. Most of the temples started acting as a place for the desolate people. Most of the temples started providing employment opportunities to a large number of population through several activities like serving the deity, dancing for the deity, singing for the deity, playing music for the deity, cleaning the temple complex, maintaining the temple complex, cooking food for the deity, prasadam concept, then making dresses, ornaments, and so many things. Besides all these things, you'll find that the priests also became a major symbol of socio-economic activities in this period. As far as iconography is concerned, you will find when the statues were being made of life size, then obviously the donated material could be used for the upkeep of the temple population. Then there were several garland makers, flower makers, sweet makers who all got employment through these temple structures. At times what happened that in areas which were not agriculturally fertile, where famine had set in or where the people were unable to pay the due royal revenue due to certain calamities, in those places also what the kings did, they undertook some project where massive temple complexes could be constructed. And these temples in the long run not only provided employment opportunity to the population, they also provided employment opportunity to the king. The donations which were given to the temple were actually the income of the state. So in this way you will find that most of these temples were playing a very crucial social and economic role in Indian history. And obviously they are reflective of our aesthetic sense as well. We can't underplay or downsize this contribution. These temples show how our art and culture has excelled, it has improved, or it has evolved over the centuries. Now we begin with the first style, the Nagar style. This is a typical layout of a Nagar style of temple. You see the shikhar, the spire. The shikhar was a representative of a hill, particularly Mount Meru, which is taken as very sacred in Hindu iconography. Then we find the Garbhagriha, the sanctum sanctorium. It was a very, very minute, small chamber where the deity's structure was kept, and very few people, like at a time only 2 or 3 people could enter it and then see the deity. So this concept of having a personalized private communication with the deity is something which develops in this period. The congregational prayers are no more valid. Then you find the antaral, the vestibule, which is connecting the sanctum sanctorium to the rest of the temple complex. Then the kalash, the symbolic water pot. You will find in Indian tradition the kalash has been taken as a symbol of fertility, and the kalash is always filled with water, which is taken as a symbol of auspicious. Then leaves, prominently mango leaves, and on top you will find one coconut. So actually this entire thing has been taken as a symbol of prosperity and symbol of productivity. That is, it's taken as a symbol of giving birth. Temple kalash or kalash in its own right has been taken as a symbol of birth. Then comes the amalak, that is the pure essence. The amalak were these edges which were developing. Then the mahamandap, that is the larger assembly hall. Now in northern temples you will find the assembly halls were not as huge, not as large as in southern temples. Reason was that southern temples also acted for certain community purposes. You will find most of the South Indian temples still have a Kalyan Mandapam, which was the place which was used for marriage ceremonies. Then we find the Mandap assembly hall. Now this plan is roughly of the Kandariya Mahadev temple at Khajuraho. So you'll find several levels of assembly halls are there. Then the Ardh Mandap, the entrance porch. See the entrance porch here. It's a long small entrance. Then the entrance steps. At the steps you'll find Dwarpalas. Several categories of Dwarpalas were there at different levels of staircase. If we talk of this side, this is Uru Shikhar, that is half Shikhar associated with that same Shikhar. Then this is the Pradakshina, the ambulatory part, where the person did ambulation, parikrama of the shrine or the deity. Then these are the walls which are known as Jangahas, the support system for the temple. And these are the balconied windows You see the windows, the jharokhas which are there, the openings, they all have got balconies. And this is the Jagati, the platform on which the entire temple structure rests. Now just observe this figure nicely and let's see how it has evolved over time. Remember the old flat-roofed temples which were made of bricks during the Gupta period? They're small platforms. At times they had a small portico with the help of a pillar. Gradually this portico was extended with time. Several portico structures came up, and on these structures the smaller shikhars came to be made. And the same style can be compared here. Over time this shikhar got associated with several minor shikhars to give it a nice clustered look. And the prime intention or the reason of having a shikhar was to show that it's the place of God. Place of God means mountains have been taken as the place abode of God, and prominently Shiva's abode has been taken to be on Mount Kailash. So this idea of having several clusters of mountains is very much prevalent in a temple spire. One more reason is that it's simple psychology. In most of the religious structures across the world, you'll find that the higher the structure, the closer you are to the deity. That idea was very much prominent. Say like the minarets of a mosque, the clock tower of a church, or the spire or the shikhar of a temple. So the idea was to carry the prayers closer to heaven or closer to God. So this abode of God in heavenly perspectives are very much relevant in this discussion. So more or less architecture is becoming more complex. This is what we said when we started this discussion, that with the Gupta period we find that the earlier simplistic traditions becoming more and more complex, and that complexity leads to further growth and refinements of taste.